Hey guys, my name is Rob, welcome to Kinetic Rugby League. In this video, I'll be giving you my Super League Round 22 power rankings. Let's get started. Starting in 12th place, and still in 12th place, I have Hull FC. I don't really know what there is to be said about them as a team at this point. I thought they'd at least put up a fight against the other team at the bottom of the Super League ladder. But no, it wasn't even one side of the ball. They weren't competent enough defensively, they weren't competent enough with the ball, which I thought in some games they've looked okay with the ball, but that would have been their only saving grace. They were just not in that fight whatsoever. Completely outperformed in attack, in defence, beaten through the middle. Just didn't look like they were really up for it, and they just clearly, based on the scoreline, weren't. I don't think there's much else that can be said. They're just a very poor team at the moment. I did kind of have my doubts about, even though London had put in some good shifts, and Hull FC hadn't been great over the last couple of weeks, that, would they really lose to London? I know I predicted London to win, but was I maybe just hoping a little bit too much? But to be defeated like that just cements them at the bottom of the power rankings. So Hull FC still in 12th. Moving on to 11th place, and still in 11th place, I have the London Broncos. They're really, really impressing me at the moment, especially with their attack. I said weeks ago if they could just strengthen up the defence a little bit, they could trouble somebody. Then they did it against Catalans, and then they do it against Hull FC. Fantastic. But what I really love about them at the moment is that their attack continues to be consistent. Sometimes it's not, they don't always put up the points that they want, but they're putting up a good standard number of points to where if they have a good defensive effort, it could be enough some weeks to actually get one over on some teams, especially Catalans, and then in this case, definitely Hull FC. And the thing is, with their attack, it looks like Super League quality. They don't look out of place at all when they're with the ball. And the best thing with them is the way that they're accurate with the passes when they spread the ball towards the edges is players can receive the ball in stride. And that means that no one has to slow down in order to receive the ball. And they keep that momentum when attacking the edges. So they're accurate with the passes. They look like they know what they want to do as well. They don't look typically confused. But a lot of players do have the freedom to kind of play off the cuff if they want to. Leigh can play off the cuff, do something a little bit different if he wants. Same with Rourke. They've got the freedom to try and express themselves individually. But they look like, as a whole, they know what they want to do, especially with the ball. I just want to continue to see more strong defensive performances to go with this Super League level attack that they've now got. But London Broncos still in 11th. Moving on to 10th place and moving down one, I have the Castleford Tigers. Pains me a little bit to have them this low because, I was hoping after a few weeks ago when they were on really good form that I could, continue to move them up a little bit more, or at least keep them in like a midfield battle. But yeah, they had lost 3 in a row. And to be fair, you look at the teams that they lost to, Salford, Leigh and Hull KR, that's a tough run of games. And it wasn't like they were completely battered in all of those games. They were just, they're beaten somewhat comfortably here and there. But I was really hoping that they'd continue with that good form, but they've just lost a lot of sting now. They don't look as disruptive as they did. Their attack maybe has lost a little bit of sting, and defensively, they've maybe regressed as a team back to where they were a bit earlier in the season. I think they can still have a say on the ending to the season for some other teams, maybe, if they can finish the season on some good form. But yeah, they've lost that edge a little bit now. But Castleford Tigers down 1 in 10th. Moving on to 9th place and moving up 1, I have the Huddersfield Giants. I think that their attacking efforts against Castleford for Magic Weekend looked a lot better. They did actually spread the ball with a lot of pace. It made them look a little bit more troubling to the Castleford defence. Defensively, I do think they still need to keep working on stuff. But at least I think now maybe a team that's got something to them that can actually have a say against some other teams, a little bit like with London. They've got their attack sort of sorted now. Defensively, Huddersfield just kind of need to work on that side of things. So they can trouble some teams. Defensive efforts need to continue to be improved, but they do look a bit more organised. They look like they have a bit more of a plan now. Maybe all the noise has kind of quieted down over the the disappointment of the season, and I kind of mentioned this last week, but they're just solely focused on making improvements where they can. There's no pressure on them at the moment. They're setting out to just be better the next day than they were the day before. So Huddersfield is probably, they're not in a great place relatively to everyone else, but for where they were and how things were going, I think they're in a good place now, and things are looking a little bit more positive on a week-to-week basis. So Huddersfield Giants up 1 in 9th. Moving on to 8th place and moving down 1, I have the Catalan Dragons. Now, I already thought that Hull KR would be somewhat comfortable in that game, but I didn't think they'd be that comfortable. Now, I know that Catalans have had their issues over the last couple of weeks. I just thought they could do maybe something and at least put up double-digit points. But, yeah, they were just completely demolished. Completely. And they've taken such a step back this season compared to last season. It's a completely different team. I don't recognise it at all. With some of the individuals that they've got, I don't think they've really got an excuse. I understand that they lost some key players, but you still look at the key players they've got available, the experience that they've got, especially in the forward pack as well, and the creative talents that they've got in the backs. I don't think there's any excuse for this team. I really, really don't. And defensively, it's been poor. On the attacking side, it's been very one-dimensional in a lot of games this season, especially against poor defensive teams. London being one of them. Hull FC and Castleford, sort of like early to midway through the season as well. They had some really poor performances, and they're just so inconsistent at the moment. They are a really, really poor team right now, and I really don't trust them to make the top 6. I think they're still in it right now, but I really do not trust them to make the top 6 at all. Catalan Dragons down 1 in 8th. Moving on to 7th place and moving up 1, I have the Leeds Rhinos. Now, of course, they're a team that lost as well as Catalans, but first of all, Catalans shouldn't be losing by that much. And 2, the actual performance from Leeds against Warrington wasn't all that bad, to be honest. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, and there were some actual good points to talk about. So first of all, I think Warrington put up 12 points when David Fussatua got the sin bin. I think it was 12. So you take that out of the game, it's a much closer scoreline. But the first half an hour, Leeds were really solid. I think they won the field position battle through the middle. I know Duffy had his injury whilst he was still on the pitch, so he couldn't move around as much. But you can only play what's in front of you, and they used that to their advantage. They pinned Josh Thulis back in the corner a couple of times. They put us under a lot of pressure, us meaning Warrington. But they looked decent, and maybe weren't quite as much of a threat as they'd normally be in attack without Brodie Croft. But I think Sinfield had a decent go, and the kicking from Frawley was fine. And through the middle, they looked pretty decent. As the game went on, Duffy felt a lot better. They found it harder to contain Warrington, but I think overall, not a bad effort. And they do seem to look a little bit more organised in attack, a little bit more defensively. Somebody has mentioned that even with Brad Arthur coming in, they've still lost more than they've won, which is a fair point. But I think they at least look to be slightly more sure of themselves with him there than they did with Rowan Smith. So Leeds Rhinos up 1 in 7th. On to 6th place, and still in 6th place, I have St Helens. Now, they lost 20-0, which on paper doesn't sound great, but I think given the teams below them at the moment, no reason to move them down at all. Definitely wouldn't move them below Leeds or even Catalans. At the moment, I definitely wouldn't. No reason to move them up, obviously, with a result like that. But 6th feels about right for me. I think they still have plenty of individuals in there that can be quite potent in attack. Maybe they've got a decent enough foundation built up over the years where in some cases they can compete defensively, but they have really taken a step back over the last couple of weeks. Yes, they're missing a lot of key players. They're probably going through the worst situation right now possible with the level of key players missing. I know Wigan had to deal with it a few weeks back, but I think the team that's going through it the most right now is St Helens. And a lot of young lads with very limited experience have been thrown in the deep end at the moment and learning their craft. And I think some of the efforts that they put in against Wigan were really, really impressive. Some really good individual efforts, not just, going through the motions, getting through the game. There was a lot of brave efforts, really having a go, trying to take on the defensive line, trying to make something happen. It didn't feel like they tried to force things. They just had a real go and looked fairly competent doing it. for such young, inexperienced players. So I'm really, proud for those young lads to get this opportunity, and they'll get some more opportunities for the rest of the season as well. But that's all I can really say. There's no reason to move them up or down based on the teams around them and their performance last week, but I just wanted to say something positive. I think the young lads were very brave and very impressive at times, so well done to them. But St Helens still in 6th. Moving on to 5th place, and still in 5th, I have the Salford Red Devils. I think, again, a team that I can't really move down based on, Saints needing to stay where they are. Maybe have taken a slight step back away from, the top 3 to top 4. The main thing to note is that they had 2 sin bins at one point. They overlapped for a couple of minutes, so they had 2 players off for a period of time. And I think dealt with that fairly well. That could have been a landslide off the back of that, but I think only conceded 1 try during that period. But defensively, there were some really poor efforts. We saw the Mark Sneed defensive effort when it was Hanley that went through for his try. The sin bin would have taken a lot out of them, because you take 1 player out the defensive line, you've now got to shore up a bit more space. I know, teams, they practice like goal line defense, but you take another one out, there's even more space to fill, and you're moving left and right constantly, along with having to, track back because you keep losing the battle through the middle. So I think you take that out, you focus more on the 13 on 13. They were still beaten comfortably, which is why they're still below Leigh at the moment. Spoiler alert, Leigh are above Salford if you haven't guessed. But I think they're still fine. They're still competitive. They will continue to compete with teams. They will be a problem for some teams. I just think they came up against a much better, much more confident, free-flowing attacking Leigh team last week. I'm sure it'll be better going into next round as well. But, yeah. Nothing really too much else to say on Salford right now, but they're still in 5th. Moving on to 4th place, and still in 4th place, I have the Leigh Leopards. I think they're sort of close to that top 3. They are pretty close. I can't remember who else they've got remaining this season, but I don't know if they're quite ready for the challenge near the top teams at the moment. We kind of saw it with Wigan a couple of weeks back. They feel like a team to me right now that beats the teams that you would not expect them to beat, but that if they want to be taken seriously, that you would hope they beat. Salford being one of them, Saints being another, Catalans as well. So teams in the middle, they can be tricky games, but if you want to take them seriously as a top team, they're games that you need them to win. But I don't know if they're quite ready enough to compete with Hull KR, Wigan and Warrington just yet. Warrington maybe, but I need to see more tests from them. I need to see them tested a little bit more. They're a real dark horse, and I think can cause some upsets to those top 3, and will have a real say in what happens during the back end of the season for some of the teams challenging for playoffs. I think they're good enough to make it, just depends on other teams around them at the moment. But Leigh look like a really strong attacking team, but need to just keep it up defensively. I think that's the only thing that I need to see from them. Just keep up the defensive efforts, and their attack will the attack will do the rest. They'll outscore teams. As long as they just maintain that defensive resiliency, Leigh will be a real dark horse for a grand final this season, I think. So Leigh Leopards still in 4th. Moving on to 3rd place, and still in 3rd place, I have the Warrington Wolves. I think it was a pretty slow start to the game. I think back-to-back weeks has been a pretty slow start, so I really need to see them turn that around. But they dealt with pressure very, very well. A lot of great individual performances to get us out of a rut early on. Some big moments from Ashton, King, Drinkwater, and especially Thulis with his try-save and tackle was incredible. So a lot of individuals winning big moments, which got us out of that slump for the first half an hour, especially with Dufty's injury. But when he was ready to go, he was just all over the place in a good way. So, and he was able to then link up with Williams as well, who I thought had a great run game. The kicking game from Drinkwater was fine. No major complaints from me. I thought it was fine. So we did lose a little bit through the middle early on, but as the game went on, I think we really started to fight back. I just want to see a much better start from the middles from us. I don't know if Yates is maybe the best go-to to start. I don't know if Harrison is either. So I don't know, do we give someone younger an opportunity? Does Max Wood? You know, because he can actually push a few players back. I think maybe him starting and do him the world of confidence if you give him a go. But I don't know. I think just Warrington needs to get better starts in the game. Maybe need to start spreading the ball a little bit earlier as well in the tackle count in our own half. Because I think we've stopped using King and Ty in that way a little bit. And we're just trying to hit teams through the middle. And then if we end up in good field position, then we'll just let Dufty and Williams do what they want to do, which I'm all fine with. But in terms of making that field position, I don't think we're using our second rows and centres enough to gain the field position as we used to earlier in the season. And the game that showed that off perfectly was the win against Hull KR. I think it was 20 points to 8 a good few months ago. That was the perfect example of us at our best. And we've gone away from that a little bit. But Warrington Wolves still in third. Moving on to second place, and still in second, I have the Wigan Warriors. Not the prettiest game from them against Saints. I think Wigan fans would admit that as well. Not the prettiest effort, but still good enough in all areas, really. I think this is an interesting time of the season. Probably a little bit later than they would have wanted. They've already gone through a bit of a period where players have been out, like really key players have been out for a good couple of weeks. But this will continue to teach them a lot. And other players will need to step up in that time. They've got a stacked forward pack that need to drive them home through the middle. And they've got players on the edges that can really create opportunities and can be strong defensively as well and really stop teams from getting through that line. And Jack Farrimond gets more game time to show what he's capable of. We've seen it plenty of times this season. And the only difference from this week to the last time he played, which was against Warrington, there were talks about his defensive ability. Sam Tompkins talked about it on the Sky broadcast, saying that he's improved his contact. And there you go. Improvements. That's what you need and you don't get these improvements by not playing players. And even though he's kind of been thrown into this situation, he's kind of rising to it. And as much as Wigan fans might, they might be eager to bring in the key players back, but in the long term, this will suit them as a team with their mindset, the resilience, and just building up the quality and confidence of younger players. So they're still very clearly a top team. Maybe with some key players out, could be tricky in some weeks if they're a little bit off it and not as efficient moving the ball around. But still well up there. So no real complaints from me at the moment for Wigan, but still in second. Finally, in first place, and still in first place, I have the Hull Kingston Rovers. They look great on both sides of the ball. Simple as that. Defensively, they don't panic. They don't get out of shape very easily, but they still remain aggressive, good line speed. Don't give away too many penalties from what I can sort of recall. So disciplined enough and very strong, just very well organised. On the attacking side, threw up a few different shapes against Catalans, sometimes deep, sometimes flat. But yeah, looked a little bit different with some of the tries that they scored. And yeah, I think just individually, everyone's working really hard. Doesn't feel like anyone's slacking. Everyone's doing their job and doing it very, very well. So yeah, no real complaints from me at the moment. They just look to be very resilient on both sides. It's not like they're relying on one thing or the other, like the attack to get them out of trouble, or they're struggling to score, but the defence just keeps them in it. Like, they look excellent on both sides. And not to be negative for the sake of it, but I guess devil's advocate is, it would be interesting to see what they're capable of with like a major injury for a couple of weeks. Like if Lewis was out for a few weeks, or May. I think, was it Jez Litton that was out for a couple of weeks? It was him or Parcell. I'm sure there was somebody. But if Evalds was out, for example, to kind of see how they'd deal with that. I don't want that to happen because I want all the best players to be available, but I think if it was like earlier in the season, I'd like to see that just to see how they deal with that kind of scenario and how they move past it and improve and continue to develop as a team. But right now, for all teams, I just want everyone to stay fit and healthy and have like the strongest playoff competition possible because it's just more fun for the sport. It's just better. But yeah, Hull KR, no real complaints right now, but still in first. So that's going to be it for my Super League Round 22 power rankings. If you've got your own list, do let me know in the comments down below. Let me know if I've been fair, unfair with anything that I've missed out, do let me know. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with more Rugby League content. But that's going to be it. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you next time.